Hi, my name is McKenna Blanthorne. In this video, we're going to be creating a super cute paper banner. Go ahead and grab all of your materials and let's get crafting along. So we are now in Silhouette Studio. This is what it looks like when you open it up on your computer, and these are all of the default settings. So if it doesn't open up your page setup panel, you'll just click this little page up in the corner, and this is where you always start out. And here you can select your machine. If you're not using the Cameo 4, select a different one from the drop-down menu. You can select your feed type, which most of the time is auto manual. And then you can also select the cutting mat that you're using. We're using the Cameo mat, and then our media size is 12 by 12 paper. But if you're using 8.5 by 11 paper or a custom size, you can always change that as well. So once you have the page setup all complete, we can actually just dive right into creating this project. There's no other steps that we need to take to start creating the project. So we can go to our library, which is the upper right-hand corner, and we're just going to click library. And I started typing jungle, but when you initially click the library, this is what it will show up as. All of these designs that are either free with your machine or designs you already maybe bought from the design store. So I'm just going to start typing jungle because we're using our jungle set of designs that come with the machine. So I started typing that, and these banner pieces popped up, and this is what we're going to be using as the base of our banner today. So go ahead and double click this design, and we're only going to be using this curved piece today, so we can delete the other pieces by clicking them and then just pressing the delete key on our keyboard. And then we're just going to click this piece, and we need to bring it into our document that we're creating in. So we're just going to right click and press copy, and then we can close this document. We don't need to save it. And then we can right click and paste it in. This is a little bit small. Our banner today is going to say roar, and it's going to have 2 leaves on the sides. So we can make it a little bit bigger. Right now it's 3.8 inches wide, and I know just from making this previously that we can make it 5.5 and that we can fit 2 pieces on each 12 by 12 piece of paper. So this is just the base of our design, but now we also wanted to add an internal offset, which will be a shape inside of our design to show, just make our letters show up more and add some contrast to it. So in order to do that, we're going to use the offset panel. So we can close our page setup panel, and then our offset panel is this star. So we can go ahead and click that, and today we're going to be doing an internal offset. So we just need to click our design, and then we're going to select this internal offset button and just click it. And then right now it's at 1 inch, so we can just slide this down to make it smaller. And I like how it has those little indents from the circles. So right now we have it at 0.29. Just to make it even, an even number, I'm going to make it 0.25, just so it's easy to remember. And then now we can go ahead and just click apply, and that internal offset is applied. But let's go ahead and fill these 2 different colors, change the colors of them. So we're going to just select our initial piece, which is the brown piece, and I just clicked up in this corner, and we're going to open the fill panel, which is this artist palette. And then I'm going to click it, and the paper that I'm using for the base is a dark green. So I'm going to click that dark green, and then it kind of makes it so we can't really see our other piece, but we just need to click that little red outline because there's no fill in that piece right now. And then I'm going to be using a light green for that piece. So I'm just going to kind of select a light green piece, and now you can see that we have our dark green and our light green. So this is all we need to do to actually create our banner piece. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw a rectangle over the top of these 2, and then I'm going to just drag it to the side. And now, as I mentioned, we want to have some little leaves on the sides that can just be the end caps of our banner. So in order to do that, we're going to go to our library, and we're going to pick one of these leaves. These leaves wouldn't be a great option because there's not a great place to string your string through. So I'm going to use these leaves that are thicker and bolder, and I'm just going to double click those. And then I'm going to use this leaf. So just like I did with the banner, I can delete the leaves I'm not using. And then I'm just going to right click this leaf and select copy, and then close this. And then I'm going to right click and paste it. And I would like my leaf to be upside down, hanging. So I'm going to use this little green circle at the top, and when you hover over it, this little circle and arrow will appear, and that allows you to grab it and rotate it. Just like that. And then we just need to add some little circles like this banner piece has, to our leaf so we can string our string through. So in order to do that, we're going to use the drawing tool, which is this rectangle over here, and we're going to use the ellipse drawing tool. So I'm just going to select that, and then I'm going to hold down Shift so it draws a perfect circle, and then just draw a little circle. And you can try and match it to the same size about as that one. And then we're going to just hold down our Option key. Well, actually, first we need to come back up to our arrow. And so we're on the Select tool. And we're going to hold down either Option or Alt, depending on what brand of computer you're using. And then we're just going to drag that to the other side as well. And once we've done this, as you can see with this banner piece, these holes are empty. So what we need to do is we just need to select all of these pieces, the leaf and the two circles, by drawing a rectangle over the top. And then we're going to go to the Modify panel, which is this little rectangle that's overlapping with a circle, and we're just going to click Subtract. And that will make it so our little holes are holes in the leaf. And we can just bring this to up here, and you can make this whatever size you want. I think I want to make it a little bit bigger. I'm not going to make it 5.5 inches because that makes it 6 inches wide, which is a little bit, right now it's 7 inches tall and 6 inches wide. So this one is 5.5 inches wide and 7 inches tall. So let's just make it 5.5 inches wide also. Perfect. So these are our pieces for our banner. And we can make this the same dark green that we made the base piece by just clicking it and then coming over to our fill panel and selecting that dark green. That's optional, it's just to help us kind of envision our banner in the end. So now let's actually build a digital preview for our banner. So I want to go ahead and group these pieces together by drawing a rectangle over the two pieces and right-clicking and selecting Group. And then I'm going to zoom out by pressing this little magnifying glass at the top. So like I said, we're going to have our leaves as our end caps. And then we want to duplicate this 4 times to say roar. So, well, we want 4 pieces, so we're going to duplicate it 3 more times. So I'm going to duplicate by holding down my Alt or Option key, and that little plus sign will show up next to my mouse. And then I can just drag out my pieces like this. And then I can repeat the same thing with my leaf that's going to go on the end. Perfect. And now we actually want to put our letters into the banner. So we're going to use our text tool right here, which is this A on the left-hand toolbar. So I'm going to click that text tool, and then I'm just going to type roar. And I chose to do it in all capital letters, and you can actually use any font that you want when you use a font in Silhouette Studio. So I'm going to select this. Once you exit out of your text tool, you can't just click and then start typing. It won't work like that, so you need to double click to enter the text box, and then you're going to select it by just holding down your mouse and dragging over the top of it. And then I'm going to use a font called Safari. So I went ahead and changed that, and then we are going to make these letters a lot bigger because right now they're small. So I'm just going to go ahead and click that text box, and then I'm going to drag my letters to make them bigger. And I think this is actually a good, decent size. So next, before I position them into their banner pieces, I'm going to make them light blue. So I just have my artist palette. If it's not open, open the fill panel by clicking the artist palette and then make them a light blue color. And now to position these on my different banner pieces, I'm just going to right click and ungroup them. And this will make them shapes instead of letters. So at this point, you can't change your text or anything. You would have to make a new text box. But now we can just drag these letters into our pieces, and our banner is coming together really, really nicely. The last thing that we're going to do is we're just going to add a couple 3D flowers to this project. So I'm going to come up to my library, and my jungle party has 3 little flowers that are part of the design, or part of the group of designs. And so I'm going to double click those flowers, and then they come in all separately. So I'm just going to draw a rectangle over the top of them, and then I'm going to select or right click and then copy them and close this design. And then I'm going to right click and paste them. And they're a little bit big right now, so I'm just going to size them down a tiny bit. And then we can just put them kind of hanging off the edge of some of our designs. Let's just put one on the O also, so they all have one. So I'm just going to duplicate that flower by, actually I'll show you the other way you can duplicate. So you can just right click and select copy, and then you can right click and select paste. All right, now we're just going to resize this flower to make it a little bit smaller, and we'll just put it down here. Actually, we're just going to have 3 flowers. Okay. All right. So now we can go ahead and separate all of our pieces so we can begin cutting. This is a good preview of what our banner is going to look like. I think it's super cute, and once you see everything come together in the 3D elements, you're going to love it. So let's go ahead and start out by just drawing a rectangle over all of our pieces, and then just right clicking and ungrouping. And that should make it so every piece is separated. And let's go ahead and just sort our pieces by color. So we're going to put all of our dark green pieces up here. And it's okay if they're overlapping because they're not on our cutting mat. And then we're going to put all of our light green pieces in a pile. And then all of our blue pieces. And then we can do our white pieces. And this red flower will be by itself. And then we're going to group our little orange pieces and our yellow pieces. So now we can go ahead and start arranging these pieces on our artboard so that they can be sent to be cut. So let's start out by cutting some of our base pieces. Let's just zoom in. As long as your base pieces are not touching this red border, you're good. That is our cut border, so we don't ever want to overlap with our cut border. So we can fit 2 pieces on our page of the green. So let's go ahead and go, once we have these on here, we can go to the send panel. And as long as everything is showing up with a red border along the outside, it means it's going to cut. If for some reason it's showing up like this in contrast to the red border, so it's just blank, you can just click it and then select cut. And it looks like last time we cut with the Silhouette machine, we were cutting cardstock. So if yours does not say cardstock, you can just open this window and then you can begin typing cardstock, and we're using textured heavy cardstock, so we're going to select that. And now we just need to turn on our machine and plug in the blade. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. Let's go ahead and prep our machine to start cutting. So you will plug in the power cords that come with your machine in the box, and then once you get those power cords plugged in, you can press this little power button on the right hand side. So once the machine comes on, you're just going to pull the cover up gently and then push it back in. And then we can insert our blade. This is the auto blade that comes with your machine. And you can see that it has a number 1. So you're going to match that to the carriage on the machine, which also has a number 1. So we're just going to pull this tab and it will click out. And then we're going to take the blade and push it down into the machine and hold it down firmly while you pull up slightly and then push the tab in. And then the blade is securely in place and ready to begin cutting. Next, we're going to load our paper onto our mat. So this blue cover comes with your mat, and make sure that you save it so that you can cover your mat anytime you store it and it won't get dusty or dirty, and it will stay sticky for a longer amount of time. So you can just take your paper and then line the corner of your paper up with the corner of the sticky part of your mat. And then press it down a few times. And now we can go ahead and load the paper. So to load this material, we're going to line this side of the mat up with this arrow and line on our machine. So we need to press the upward arrow on the control panel, and then once it starts blinking, we just hold the mat on top, lining it up with the line and arrow, and it will automatically pull it in. And you should load the mat this way because it gives it a nice even load all the way across the top so that the mat is being pulled the same amount as it's cutting. So now we can hop back into Silhouette Studio and send this to cut. Here in Silhouette Studio, we are back in the Send panel, and we already selected the material and the blade and everything. Like I said, we're not changing any of the default settings. So now we just need to come down here to the bottom and press Send. Our machine just finished cutting, so now we can go ahead and make sure that this cut all the way through by just peeling it back a tiny bit. It did cut all the way through. The reason I always like to check to make sure is that if it didn't cut all the way through, you can just send it for another pass on your Silhouette Studio to have the blade cut in the exact same spot. So we're going to go ahead and unload this piece now by pressing that downward arrow, and then we can peel off our excess paper. And you can cut these scraps and save them if you want to. And then I'm going to turn over the mat and peel off our banner pieces. And the reason that I turn it over is so that I can avoid my paper curling. So we have our two pieces. I'm just going to take these little circles off. And now we're ready to cut this exact same piece again. So I'm going to load my next green paper onto the mat, my dark green, and then press the upward arrow, hold it in place with the edge lined up to the gray arrow, and then allow it to load. And back in Silhouette Studio, we could move these pieces to the side and then drag these pieces onto the mat, but they're actually the exact same pieces. So we can just move these over, and then we can just go back to the Send panel and click Send. Now let's just go ahead and check that again. It cut perfectly, so press the downward arrow to unload. This project is a lot of cutting because it's a lot of different pieces of paper. So you're going to get a lot of practice cutting paper while you make this project. We're going to load this back onto our page or onto our mat. Now this is for our leaves. So back in Silhouette Studio, we're in the Send panel, so let's navigate to the Design tab up here. And then we're going to draw a rectangle over these pieces and drag them to the side. And then we're going to take our two leaves and place them on our artboard. And now we can go back to the Send tab, and we're just going to click Send. Sure this cut all the way through. Perfect. Let's unload it by pressing the downward arrow. This one is a little bit trickier to get off the mat just because it is these curved lines. So just make sure to pull from the center so that you don't rip your leaves. And then be gentle when you're pulling them off as well, just so that they don't rip. So now we've cut the base of our banner, and we can cut the light green pieces now. So we are going to go back into Silhouette Studio. Oh, actually, we're going to load our light green paper onto the mat. And then we're going to load this into the machine. And now back in Silhouette Studio, we're going to go back to our Design tab and move these leaf pieces to the right side. And let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit with our magnifying glass and grab these light green pieces. And I don't think we'll be able to fit 3. So we will just have to cut 2 at a time. Yep, can't quite fit 3. So we're just going to cut 2 at a time. So I put them at the top, and then we're going to go to the Send panel and click Send. You may notice that I have a little tiny edge of this piece that the excess paper left, and you can just turn it over and then just tear that off, and it will be on the back side, so you won't even be able to tell. And that was just my fault when I was peeling it off. So go ahead and repeat the same cut for the rest of the pieces. Always make sure that it cuts and then press the downward arrow to unload. All right, now we are going to cut the blue letters for our banner. So go ahead and grab your blue piece of paper and then stick it onto your mat and load that by pressing the upward arrow, waiting for it to blink, and then holding the mat lined up with the arrows, the gray arrow. And then in Silhouette Studio, I'm just going to take my blue letters over here and pull them onto my mat. And we can fit all of them, which is great. So then we're going to go to the Send panel and click Send. Make sure that this one cut, and then unload it by pressing the downward arrow. This A kind of had a little bit of an edge, so we're just gonna pull it off. Then remove the internal pieces of your letters. And the only thing that we have left to cut now is our little flowers. So we're going to go back to our Design tab and move these blue pieces over to the side. And then let's begin with our orange flowers. So I'm just going to drag these up into the corner over here. And then you'll see that we're only using the very corner piece of the paper, so I'm actually going to just cut a piece with scissors out of this giant piece. So I'm just going to take like a quarter of it, and I'm just going to eyeball it. I'm not going to measure it. And I'm just going to cut about a quarter of this piece of paper. And it doesn't have to be perfect because we're not using it as a perfect square. And then we're going to line our two edges up with the corner. And then press the upward arrow until it starts blinking, and then load this in. And then go to your send panel in Silhouette Studio and click send. And while this is cutting, I'm actually going to cut down the rest of my pieces as well to just be smaller pieces. And then I cut this little yellow piece while we were waiting. So I'm just going to line that up, the corner. And then in Silhouette Studio, I am going to move my orange pieces off to the side and then just line up these little tiny yellow pieces. And then we're going to just load our mat. And click send. These ones are kind of in the way of my bar, so I can't check to make sure that they cut, but I can assume that they did because all of my other pieces are cutting great. So. We're going to cut our white piece next. Back in Silhouette Studio, just go back to your design tab, move these yellow pieces off, and then I actually might need to do a bigger white piece. I don't think I cut it big enough. Nope, I didn't. So I'm going to unload this piece actually. Just save that for another time. And then this piece needs to be like 4 inches by 6 inches. So it looks like if I just cut this straight across, that will be enough. The white flowers were bigger than I thought they were. And then in Silhouette Studio, I'm going to go to the Send panel and click Send. All right, so now I'm going to unload it by pressing the downward arrow. And then flip it over. And now we're just going to take our little red piece for our single red flower and load that in. Okay, we're going to go to the send panel and click send. Awesome. So now we have all of our pieces cut, so now we get to do the fun part of assembling our banner. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn off my machine now because we're not cutting anything else, and I'm going to gently pull the cover to close it. The first thing that we need to do to assemble our banner is put together all of our pieces for our flowers. So I'm just going to lay out our pieces here. And you can reference Silhouette Studio to know which pieces go with which flower, but I have it pulled up on the computer and I'm just going to arrange them. So I'm going to take a tape runner, and then I'm just going to put some tape on the inside of the flower and then place it inside my orange flower. And this one also had a little yellow center. So I'm going to take the yellow piece, and this one is a very small piece, so keep that in mind. You might want to use a glue stick if you have one. And we are going to just kind of bend the leaves up a little bit. Or not the leaves, the petals, sorry. And this will just make it pop off the page a little better. So there's the orange flower, and then this one going to have the orange center. So I'm just going to actually do this before. And you can also curve your petals if you want. There's all kinds of methods for curving flowers on the internet that you can check out. And then lastly, we have this one. I think this one's my favorite flower. It's so cute. Okay. So now we're going to assemble our pieces. So let's begin by putting our letters on our light green pieces. So I'm just going to take my letters and repeat the same thing I just did with the flowers. I love tape runners because they're just really easy to use and they stay really, really well. We're just going to place them in the middle of the light green pieces. Just make sure you're not doing your letters backwards. You're not putting the tape on the wrong side. Now we can add these to the base pieces. So just flip it over. Ooh, this is looking so cute. I love it. All right, and the last thing we need to glue is just the flowers onto their pieces. So we had, I think we had the big white flower, and you can reference your design if you want to in Silhouette Studio, but it doesn't matter a ton. We're just gonna put this right here. And then we're gonna put this little orange one, or big orange one, I guess, down here. And then we have our little flower up here, kind of on the side. All right, so now we just need to string this banner with our string. So let's go ahead and grab the string. I'm gonna move this over a little bit more so you can see the whole thing together because it's so cute. And I'm going to use my scissors, and you always want to make it a little bit longer than you think you need to, just so you have room on the edges, and it does take a little bit to string it. So I'm just going to make it a little bit longer than I think, and you can always cut it down if you need to as well. And then I like to string it so that the string goes across the top. So you'll start at the back and then string the front. And the first pieces are always a little bit longer just because you have to feed the whole thing through. Okay, then you're going to feed from the back. Something you can do if you would like to is you can tape your pieces on the back. You can tape the string to the back so that it stays in the exact same place. I'm not going to do that today, but you can do that. And see that you don't realize how much string it takes. I even wish I maybe would have made this a tiny bit longer. But I can adjust it always too. You can pull it more or pull it less. All right, guys, and here is our final banner. Turned out so fun. I love this project because you can literally make it for anything you need to. You can make it for a holiday, you can make it for a party, and any theme that you want. It's so customizable. So go ahead and make this project. We're so excited that you could join us today, and I hope you learned a lot of helpful tips on how to use your Silhouette machine. See you next time.